One.
Hello and welcome to Live Coding Happy Hour, the weekly get-together where we code and nerd it up all in the ServiceNow ecosystem. I'm Dave Slusher. I'm joined with Josh Nerius and Chuck Tomasi, and we are going to continue our journey through kind of exploration of Flow Designer this week. So, gentlemen, it's good to reconvene after the holidays. Thank you both for being here. All right, let's go around the horn and give our little bit of longer bios. Let's start with you, Josh. You're the driver today.
Yeah, so I am Josh Nerius. I'm a developer advocate here at ServiceNow on the developer program. As we always do, go to developer.servicenow.com. And it was a good holiday. It's always good to be away, but then it's also good to be back. So being back on live coding on Friday feels right. And yeah. Are we doing beers or are we going to come to that in a minute?
Let's do the intros and then we'll do another round of beers. So, Chuck.
All right. That works.
I do that all the time, too. We're going to figure this out sooner or later. Hi, I'm Chuck Tomasi from ServiceNow. Been here for about 7.5 years. Customer for a couple of years before that. Largely building custom applications and integrations. I'm the ServiceNow guy with the red bow tie, in case you forgot.
And I'm Dave Slusher, developer advocate with ServiceNow, teammate with Josh. Been here. We just had I think we were off over the holidays. Since the last time we did this, we had our 4-year anniversary. So it happened, I think, the Saturday after Thanksgiving or the Saturday after. It was, I think, the Saturday between the last show and So we've been here 4 years. Holy cow.
I don't know how that happened.
Yeah. And so I was just actually, if anybody is watching this, who is new to the ServiceNow ecosystem because you met me at November, welcome. So very good. Not really relevant to the ServiceNow conversation, but November was great, and I'm glad I went. Okay, so we are going to do some Flow Designer stuff, but before we get to that, let's go around the horn in the same order, and let's talk about our beers. Josh?
All right. So this week I'm going away from the dark beer. I have got a 21st Amendment Brewery Blood Orange IPA.
Ooh.
So going back to the IPA this week, and it's winter, but it's like 51 degrees here in Chicago in December. So can't drink the dark
heat
beer.
Wave.
Yeah, it is.
All right, Chuck.
Winter's coming, my friend. I saw that on Game of Thrones. I am trying something new. I was rummaging around in the refrigerator for something different than the 12-pack of Four Peaks that I had for the last several shows and the Barrio Blonde. And I came up with the Smith & Forge hard cider. I normally am not a hard cider person, but I'm willing to give this one a try. If it fails, I have a kilt lifter also available. A backup plan.
All right, and this is absolutely new. I've never had this one before. The Duclaw Sweet Baby Java, which is a chocolate. It's an espresso bean infused chocolate peanut butter porter. So I had those between 1 and 2 year old Liquid Bliss, which is also a chocolate peanut butter porter. I'm gonna try one that's relatively of modern vintage today. So all right, with all that said, Josh, tell us a little about what's going to happen today. If you want to do a little bit of recap of where we finished up last week or 2 weeks ago with Flow Designer.
Yeah, sounds good. So 2 weeks ago, really what we did was we just explored Flow Designer and a little bit of IntegrationHub. In the process of doing that, we did some integration with YouTube. So one of the things that we talked about then was that running the broadcast that you're watching right now is sometimes a little bit complicated because we have a variety of things we have to do, tasks that we have to perform. We have to schedule stuff on youtube.com and start up virtual machines and just all of this stuff. So that was our goal, was to start putting together a series of custom actions in IntegrationHub and look at how we can use actions plus Flow Designer to automate the process of running this broadcast. So we're building this broadcast on this broadcast. It's very meta.
Classic bootstrap, right?
Very, very much so. The one key is we're not actually making changes to our real YouTube account because we don't want to lose you all. But that's just a side note. So this week, we might get a little bit into the stuff with the automation, but really the goal is to just continue exploring Flow Designer and IntegrationHub. I think we're probably going to be doing this for a couple of weeks. There's a lot of stuff there. I will mention that broadcast is, I think, the fastest. It's basically breaking every record on the YouTube channel. Everybody really is very interested in this stuff, so we're going to keep talking about it. It was the fastest to X number of views, the most likes in a week. I think it's the third most watched video on the entire channel, and the channel's been around for a year. So, and the video's been around for 2 weeks. So anyway,
this week we're adding pictures of kittens to make it grow faster.
Yeah, so we think that means something. So anyway, that's why we're going to keep talking about it. Well, one reason anyway. So with that, let me transition off.
I can tell you that I'm excited once we get to the dog food point, because setting up and here is the use case for this, right? Setting up the YouTube events for this very show that you're watching right here is problematic, right? Because there's a lot of settings, and it's very easy to click the wrong thing, and it's very easy to, forget to do a thing, and, forget to do the endpoint correctly. And at the very least, we don't have to change the stream key every week, which we used to have to do. And but so actually getting myself, I usually do that, and I'm nervous every week I'm going to screw up the settings on this, because it has happened, right? So.
Yeah, this is the same scenario that you'd get with some people are familiar with setting up a VM on VMware. There's so many parameters and whatnot. Like, just take it from the catalog request and do it. Let's let the machine do what it's supposed to do and eliminate the human error factor.
Yeah. Yep, that is absolutely true. So with that, let's just take a look. Here's the flow that we were working on last week. And just as a reminder, what we did is we defined a trigger in our artifact manager application. And basically what we said is anytime there is an artifact created and the status changes to ready to publish, and if it's a live stream, then we're going to actually run this. And then we did some things. We used a log statement, but when we built a custom action that would actually go out there and schedule this thing on YouTube. And we did verify that this thing was actually working. So that's what we did before. What I want to do now is, I don't know if everything we're going to look at right now is going to directly factor in. We're just going to explore other stuff. What I really want to do, I mean, this might seem a little bit open-ended, but I want to start putting things onto this flow and seeing what they do, because there are some other constructs that we haven't explored yet. So actually, you know what? What I'm going to do is, just to keep this clean, I'm going to create a new flow. We're just going to.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. One of the purposes of Flow Designer is to keep things tight and succinct, and you can debug them easily. If you start making this big monolithic chain of this happens, then that happens, I would expect that the update from one flow could potentially trigger another flow.
Yeah. How about if one thing that we want to play with while we're doing this is for a reasonable chain of events, right? We're going to schedule it, and one of the other things that has to happen in kind of our internal workflow is we have things where we want to create other artifacts, but we can't do it until we get the YouTube URL, right? So that gates some things. And so in your flow, you will now, after you do that thing, you'll now have the URL. So you could automate some of the stuff that happens there, right?
That's actually really true, yeah.
You could say, just for a proof of concept, because it's the one that's out of the box, you could just post it to Slack. Like, all right, next one is scheduled. Boom, here's the Slack URL. Here's the URL posted to Slack.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, I love that. So let's do that. So let's actually look at what that would entail.
And that can be a stand-in for other stuff, right? Which would be, going forward, that might be post to various Twitter accounts or etc. With some set of things. Like we don't have, like right now, we don't have a spoke for Twitter, but we easily could, right? Someone just has to build it.
Yeah, that's very true. So yeah, I actually love that. So what we've got here. What we did before was we went out there, we got that URL from YouTube, and then we put it into the artifact. But yeah, if we go down the path of Slack, let's just try it. So one of the things to note is this did involve first activating the IntegrationHub plugin. And if you are on a personal developer instance, you'll have to go onto the developer portal and go to your instance management page and activate the IntegrationHub plugin from there. That will turn on these example spokes, which include Slack and Microsoft Teams and HipChat. So just something to be aware of. So
I don't even remember. Did we talk about what you can and can't do with IntegrationHub 2 weeks ago? I think we did, right?
I don't know if we got very much into that.
So if you just have Flow Designer and not IntegrationHub, you can do all the internal on instance things, but you can't do anything that reaches off the instance.
And that includes scripting as well. There's a script action that doesn't show up.
Yes, you also can't script, and I'm presuming that's to avoid the loophole where you write integration-y things by a script.
Right.
So you can neither script nor you can either use script nor the REST activities.
By
unless you have
default.
the
Yeah.
unless
now,
IntegrationHub is turned on.
Right. Now, one thing to mention with that is I do believe, and I'll verify this, and we can talk about this in future broadcasts or put it in the notes or whatever, but I do believe it is still possible to activate it and only use the script and not actually communicate with external systems. I think part of the reason that the script is there is because it needs to be intentional. You don't want to accidentally get into a situation where you've incurred licensing, and so it's, I think, because of the opportunity to call external systems that way. I believe that's how it works.
Well, if you're building your own custom action, you still have the ability to script in the step, correct?
Not by default.
No.
Not until you turn that on.
Okay.
Yeah, not without the IntegrationHub plugin. Like you'll see
Gotcha.
it grayed out, so you can't even select one of those.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yep, and so it's a little confusing. I think after people have gotten used to it, it'll make more sense. But there are a couple of things like that to be aware of. So what I'm going to do, the Slack spoke has 4 actions by default. 3 of these are for posting to existing records, so we can post a change, incident, or problem. We just want the generic post a message action. And there are a couple of things here. So the first thing we need is we actually need a webhook URL. So the way this Slack integration works is this relies on Slack webhooks. Now, what I need to do, I'm going to actually do this off screen really quick. I need Chrome, not Chroma. That one's for controlling my multicolored hue lights. That's not what I want.
I have to look for that now.
Get a little bit of weird lighting going on in here. So bear with me one moment. Well, what I'm doing right now, actually, I'll show you what I can. What I don't want to do is accidentally put credentials up here on the screen. So at whatever point things look like they're getting scary, I might move this off. So what you'll have to do is you're going to have to go into Slack to set this up. And actually, one of the easiest ways, if you just search for Slack webhook integration, you'll get some basic details about this. This is called an incoming webhook, and there are a couple of things you need to do. After you have set this up, what's going to happen is you're going to have this URL, and you can post messages to this URL in a certain format. And what so this is what it looks like. It's going to look something like this: hooks.slack.com/services, and then a bunch of stuff. What this spoke does is it handles everything else. It handles formatting the message. It handles things like which. Let's just go back and look at it. So which username should it go to, or which channel should it go to, that kind of stuff. And it makes this pretty flexible. So
how are credentials handled with that, Josh?
Well, that's kind of the interesting, beautiful, and scary thing about Slack webhooks, which is that whoever has that Slack webhook endpoint can post messages to it.
Okay.
So the endpoint by itself is kind of a credential.
Yeah, the endpoint is the private. The endpoint, knowing the endpoint is the secret key, effectively.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so that's a little interesting. It's something to be aware of. Let me do this. I have a personal Slack channel that I can test, and this will let me show things that I probably couldn't otherwise very easily. I'm just gonna. I know you're just watching a blank screen that's not doing anything, so this is very, very interesting and informative.
No questions on YouTube at the moment.
All right. So I've created this LCHH channel, and I'm going to go into, I believe it's Manage Apps, I think is where this is going to be.
Yeah, and while you're working on that, we can answer the question from MHZ Prayer. What's the reference to accidentally incur licensing? What's the feature here that requires additional ServiceNow licensing costs? That's what we're talking about there is the difference between Flow Designer and IntegrationHub, where Flow Designer does not require a licensing, but IntegrationHub does. And so, yeah, that's when you first get this, like IntegrationHub will not even be activated. Like you as a customer would need to invoke high support, or if you're on your personal developer instance, then you need to go through the manage when you add plugins from the developer portal, because they're because they require special access. But that's the whole thing, is that if you're going to use IntegrationHub, that is a licensing required feature.
Yeah. So while that was that was kind of the perfect amount of time. So what I did in that period of time was I was able to register an incoming webhook on my Slack team. And then all you do to use this message is you just post that webhook URL in here. So I've got that webhook URL. If you're looking at this and you see this, you can send messages to it. I'll just deactivate it later. So what we want to do is we want to say new broadcast scheduled. And then we can say something like URL, and then we can actually pull the YouTube URL into this. What I can also do is I can specify a username. So this is what will actually show up in Slack. You know what I'm going to do first is we're just going to test this, and then we'll start making some modifications to it so you can sort of see what the different options do. So we're going to pick one of the ones that we did before. We've got that one for November 17th. We'll run the test. And if things worked, there we go. So we've got new broadcast scheduled, URL equals, and clearly looks like the URL isn't quite working.
Yeah.
But the point is that we did make a call to it. So maybe what we need to do is maybe we need to select a different one. Maybe ASDF. That's promising. Well, clearly. But that's not the point. The point is what we actually posted. So we can post whatever we want to the channel.
We'll debug yet last week's work later.
Yeah, we'll get back into what we did last week at another time. Now,
I think what you were about to note is when it comes in as Slack, it was coming in as what is it, Slack integration, incoming webhook.
Yeah, it's coming in as incoming webhook, and that's what we can change on this side. So my browser is totally frozen right now.
Oh no.
Can't. Web page. Oh no. Let me just kill it. Let's reload. I'm gonna have to re-add that.
Didn't take that long, as long as you have the URL somewhere.
Yeah. So I was chatting with Dave and Chuck right beforehand. I actually am doing an experiment with Firefox. I've been trying to use Firefox as my primary browser, and that was not a promising experience. So we'll see about that. But now what we can do is we could say username. So I could say IntegrationHub here if we wanted to. I could also put this into a separate channel. And so if I go back to Slack, my username is Nerius. I could actually send it to, I could say @Nerius, and that would go to me. I can also do an icon. So if we go back to Slack, any of these icons that are available to us, any of the emojis, we can pick one of those and put it in there. So I don't know if there's anything in here for like a live stream, broadcast.
I actually never knew how. I didn't know how that worked because I actually was trying to do the wrong thing. And as I was playing with this, getting ready for the Kingston release, I thought that I could pull basically the avatar from a user and have it come in as the avatar on the left. So I was trying to pull the record, pull the icon out of the user table and all this stuff. Not realizing that how that worked,
Gotcha. So I'm just going to put a heart in there. How's that? And that'll be our link. That'll be our thing. I'm going to save this and we'll test it again. And this time
we don't have to worry about the URL.
Yeah, we're just going to take that out. And there we go. So now we've got it. It's got a heart icon. It says it's from IntegrationHub.
Okay.
There's our message, and that's good to go. So
you could also put the emojis in the message itself, right? If you said test message : heart, it would show up there.
We can find out. I think it should. Yeah, because I believe the way this is set
it'll
up,
be interpreted by
Slack. That's a Slack output thing.
Right.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to make a quick change. And
over to Chrome.
We're going to pull a Chrome window over here.
Bring up IE6.
Yeah, it could be my computer too, because I don't know if you're seeing this, but it's taking forever for Chrome to even re-render at full screen. We might be witnessing the slow implosion of my laptop. Hello.
We hear you.
Huh. Well, I'm talking to my browser.
Oh, you're talking.
Because it's not doing anything. Let's see. Let's kill some things and hopefully not kill Skype. If I disappear, you'll know what happened. All right, there we go. So now we're back. And we'll open up the test.
You saved it that time, though, so we should see it.
There we go. So, all right. So we're all back. So yeah, if we put something in the message, let's just find out. So if we say something like this and test that, and we'll take a look at it. Will it work? It does. So yeah, we can put emojis in there. It should unfurl links. It should do all sorts of stuff. So it's pretty flexible. The other thing that's cool about this particular one is if you wanted to do something with a different record. So this was just to post a general message, but if you wanted to post a more rich message, we could actually say post incident details. And now if we actually give it an incident, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hard code this in here so you can see what it looks like. I will copy this hook URL from before, and we'll paste it into here. And we'll just pick something. And now when we send this, we'll first find out if I actually needed to save it for that to work. No, I didn't. So what this is actually doing is it's taking that incident and it is spitting out a bunch of details about it. So this is kind of a really nice thing if you wanted to, display information about various tasks.
Event.
Yep. And the thing about that too is, so, perhaps one of the things we'd want to do is have something like that for artifacts. Yep. What we can do is we can use what's out, we can use what comes with the platform. So we can come in here and look at these actions. And so I could come in here and I could say, I want, let's just look for anything with Slack in it. So I want essentially the equivalent of post incident details, but I want this to be post artifact details. And so to do that, I would just copy this.
That's cool. I was just going to say, why couldn't we build our own Slack action?
Yeah, so let's do that. So let's do post artifact details. And we'll copy this. You notice we're going to copy it into our scope.
And you're probably only going to have to touch that build payload script, I would imagine. Right?
Yeah, I think so. We'll see here in a moment because we'll have to look at.
I guess you'll have to change the input a little.
Yeah, so there's some default fields. So the default fields are short description, category state. What I could probably do is we probably don't want category. We do want state. We don't want priority. Maybe we do want assigned to.
Because that's who's presenting, right?
And let's just look at an artifact really quick and see what other fields.
I don't know your fields. Do you know your fields?
I don't. I wrote the app and I don't. But I do know that.
Casey says, "Hell yes for copying out-of-box actions."
Yes,
that's like the widgets too.
So let's take a look at one of these things. And if I recall, I don't think I'm extending task. So we might have to make a couple of other minor changes.
You don't think so? There's a lot of common fields there.
So we've got type. Yeah, so we want to bring in type. And is title or is it short description? It's short description. Okay.
Smells like a task to me.
So we've got that. And then we basically we go and we're just dropping at this point into the Slack utils script include. So we're saying create a payload on the inputs and then the fields to post. You know what? I'm going to see if this just works.
How did it do the formatting? The left, right, and bold?
That's going to be in that script include.
Yeah.
We Slack utils create payload.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll take a look at that one in a second. Now what we can do is.
And did you notice that we now have like a new spoke just automatically by having saved a thing in it?
Yeah. Yeah. So now under here, we've got artifact manager spoke and there's post artifact details. Now, because the context has changed, we're not in the context of
Slack.
A thing called Slack. We probably would want to call this post artifact details to Slack. Right. That would probably make sense. So put the webhook URL in. Oh yeah, we've got to change an input. So we've got to change the incident input. So let's take a look at that now. So go to our inputs. And right now it's referenced incident. We're going to change this to artifact. ARTIFACT. That's not very difficult to spell. And put it there. And we'll save it.
And you also have to publish it, right?
So I can, as long as I have this thing turned on to show draft actions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it would not show up if I didn't have that on. So we'll paste that back in. We'll pick an artifact, and we'll just see what happens. If this works, I'll be really happy. I wouldn't be surprised if we have to do a little bit of a modification to this, but we'll see. I don't see anything.
No.
So let's take a look. Now we get our handy dandy
debugger
execution details. So we've got an error. We can see right there. Slack utils is not defined.
and in a different
makes
scope.
Sense. Yeah, it's in a different scope, and so as a result,
the protection. Oh, you just have to
prefix it.
Prefix it to whatever that scope is.
Yeah, I do. Before I do prefix it, I'm just going to take a look and see if it's available to all scopes.
Good point.
And if it's not available to all scopes, we can just copy it. So there's Slack utils. And it is this application scope only.
Boo!
But it's not too bad because, we may want to make changes to this anyway, and it just makes it easier. So I will wait for my browser to finish rendering. There we go. And I'm just going to copy this stuff.
I have not had good luck copying read-only script fields out of Chrome. Let's see if you do.
We will find out in just a second here. I'm in what? Dev 17593. 17593. Go.
What a man, what a man. He invokes Studio from the URL.
Fewer clicks. So we'll switch our app to Artifact Manager, and we'll just create a Slack utils. And I think, something I really want to stress with this is that a lot of the content that you'll see, especially with IntegrationHub, like these Slack actions and Microsoft Teams and whatnot, they're there for you to copy. This is there as reference to say, this is how to get started. Now take it and use it and adapt it and do what you need to. And so that's, don't be afraid to do that. But one thing you should do if you do that is copy it better than I did. It copied it and pasted, but I think there's something a little weird going on, Chuck, based on what you were saying.
Oh, I usually don't get anything.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to to amplify what Chuck mentioned about 10 minutes ago, this is completely analogous to out-of-the-box widgets in Service Porter. It's the what's being provided in the out of the box baseline instance is not necessarily something that you want to grab with and use for production. It's kind of there as a template. It's there as an example of something working.
Yeah, absolutely. So now all I need to do is figure out how to actually copy this stuff. And I don't know why it's not copying for me. It says it was on line 42. I feel like there are some line breaks in there. That all
pushing
looks
an
fine.
object. I see object being built in that. Yeah.
So let's do this. If I do a show XML, can I copy and paste? No, that's going to be too much of a mess.
Yeah.
What happens if you paste the show XML and then just do the form, let the editor format? Is that
show XML is going to be encoded, so your semicolons and whatnot, I believe. Oh, no, maybe not. You're right. If there's no line breaks, the formatter won't work. It's not going to add line breaks. It's just going to tabify it.
That is the question. Yeah, it looks like, I think it's not, I think it's the browser issue that's stripping out the line breaks.
Yeah, and your greater thans are ampersand GTs.
Can I view the source of this and preserve line breaks? Oh,
no,
I certainly can.
Oh, hey.
There we go. That'll do it.
Not making this look good for the people at home.
It's not too bad.
Casey's in favor of the show XML as well, which is something that Chrome does a little bit better than Firefox, according to Kevin.
I'm in Chrome.
Yeah, I know. If you were in Firefox, you would have run into no formatting whatsoever.
So this is
Still
interesting.
barking about it?
Valid property ID 142.
So here's 42. There's something a little bit weird about this formatting. Let me just see if I can clean that up a little bit. Let me zoom out too, because we've got this crazy zoom. It's a little bit difficult.
We could do the full screen thing.
So 42. Let me just try saving this again. Nope, it still doesn't like it. What are we missing?
Push title inputs field get label value. Short is short. What is
Out
short?
of curiosity, why don't you try commenting out title and value? Or maybe even comment out everything and just push the empty array and let's see, or the empty hash object. See if that does anything. Or if that's giving us a false
Nope, that was it. So that was a good.
Okay, so now let's add in line by line those guys.
Yeah.
Your comma's gonna throw it off a little bit.
Yeah, that one's good.
That's annoying. When you save, it goes back to not full screen.
Wondering is short, and that was fine. So it's that last
short. It's on 42.
You know,
and it's the index. Is that a reserved
They're not.
word?
Why are they not putting quotes around the property names?
That's a good question. But I think Dave just hit on it, which is that short is a reserved word. And the reason I know this is because this is exactly the problem we run into when you try to take external JavaScript libraries that have the word short in them and run them in ServiceNow.
Does JavaScript have a short integer?
It doesn't, but there are some like future reserved words, if I'm not mistaken, that some of the time in extreme strict modes will throw things off. So that was it. That was all it was. There was a syntax thing, I guess.
Shame on us.
And that is exactly why I like to always quote those, even though it will syntactically work without them. Is that the other thing is it just makes it more
readable?
I mean, that's not only readable, but it makes it more direct as to what
explicit.
is a string and what is an interpolated value coming from a variable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so more freedom of what you can use for your property names.
I mean, that's a side benefit. My main thing is just is like if there's one thing that I have like consistently, one drum I've consistently beat on this program is, kindness to future you and your compatriots, right? And by making things as clear and as explicit as possible.
Yeah, I'm surprised that got by a code review, to be honest. There's another set of them down below. It's like they're all over the place. Anytime somebody sets up an object, they're not using quotes.
Well, it's okay. So we've got our version and our version.
At November, I saw a lot of code. I saw a lot of non-quoted like JSON like this getting built, and it made me a little itchy every time I saw it. Right?
Itchy.
So now that we've got that, let's run it. Let's see what happens. And I'm gonna have to re-add that, aren't I? Yes, I will.
Because you modified the action.
I modified something and it wanted me to reload it, so I'm just going to add it back in. So back to Artifact Manager, and we'll post artifact details. And the artifact, we can actually, I'm not going to hard code that.
Yeah, from the
yeah.
Yay!
Drag that over, and I'm going to save it so I don't have to keep re-adding that thing. And let's see.
I was wondering why you were putting it in twice. Just curious.
And would you look at that? So
we're missing a couple of fields, but that's not too shabby.
Well, so if you recall, we took a bunch of stuff out, and so we can add things back in now. And this is one of the interesting things that makes this flexible is that there's this override default fields. Yep. So what we can do is we can go, and I need to open the main UI again here. I just need to leave that open. I don't know why I keep closing it. I'm trying to be better about having like hundreds of tabs open on my browsers, and then sometimes it gets me in trouble.
He's got to find his balance.
Yeah, I haven't found it yet. So we've got the number, and we've got the title and the type.
I thought you had assigned to in there also. Assigned to is empty, so it's probably not displaying it because it's empty.
Correct. Yeah, it's not going to display it because it's empty. We could put the abstract in there, and the abstract is it abstract? Let me just right click, and it is abstract. So we'll do that. So we'll do title. No, it's short description. Type.
Can't you do these from
abstract
the pill picker?
These you cannot. These are currently
the pill picker is interpolating data, right? Those would be the fields that we're looking for.
Yeah. So now if we rerun this,
so if you had a field that contained other fields, I'm not sure what the point of the pill picker is on that particular case.
I think the pill picker is on literally everything.
Yeah. So we could pass in a dynamic set of fields if we wanted to.
Okay.
So, you know, if for some reason we wanted to say, hey, let's look up which fields we should send this time, we could do that. So that would be dynamic.
Make it right now more data driven.
Or it could be, I mean, you could have, it doesn't have to come from a record, right? You could have an action that was some script, which is calculate fields to show. And then it exposed an output that you could use as a pill in a future one.
Yeah. Yeah. If you wanted to get more interesting with it, for sure.
I think that would be a weird use case, but it would be a technically allowed use case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. The other thing I'm going to call attention to, so a couple of things. So we've been kind of poking on a lot of things, but just to highlight what we just did, we didn't really make any changes except for on this action, we changed this from incident to artifact, and we copied and pasted the script include. Everything else is working exactly. We haven't touched anything.
Good point.
So, I mean, we fixed that property in the JSON, but anyway, I'm not going to count that.
Because the script include is called the same thing, we didn't have to touch build payload. We didn't have to touch anything else.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep. So this is now in our app. We can use it how we want to use it. Something else I want to call attention to on this particular action is that we've got this additional message. So I could say event scheduled on YouTube. And now when this thing runs, what this is going to do is we can add additional context. So by default, we're just posting stuff about this artifact, but we don't know why the artifact's there. So now we actually see context about why are we posting this artifact. So it's a little bit different than that general sort of generic post message action, and but it's pretty powerful. So that is that. Let me go ahead and save this. What's next? We can look at.
Do we want to fiddle with the YouTube integration? Because I do know that when we were looking at the artifacts, that YouTube URL with nothing in the nothing in it for the essentially the what do you call it, the sysid of that is how it is in the record. Right. So it's not a Slack problem. That's actually a YouTube integration problem.
Oh, go back and fix that.
Oh,
you can do that now if you want to.
Yeah. Let's take a look at that. So I think that's going to be happening in this update artifact record. That seems to be the most likely spot. So let's take a look here. Uh-oh.
Did we? Because we verified the outputs on the action were correct, right?
Yeah, I think so.
We were building it 2 weeks ago. I swear we had the short number that comes after the V, and then we had the complete URL. So
let's
you're right.
do this. What we can do is we can run it. Yeah. exactly. We'll take a look at the output. So scheduled broadcast should be giving us a full URL somewhere, and it is not.
Oh.
So there is an issue in that action.
Yep.
So
this may be an artifact because we're trying to reschedule something in the past.
Oh, you could be right.
So this may actually, before we go too crazy,
Might
why don't
be
we just create
YouTube
one record
no,
for the
no.
future? Yeah,
Yeah.
let's create one
Good
record
point,
for the
good
future and
point.
see if we get an actual.
You know what? It's easier than that.
Like,
So let's go and look at our credentials. Remember something we didn't do before?
They expired in an hour.
Yeah, they did.
We didn't re-authenticate.
Oh, yep, there we go. So let's oh no, that's not the account that I wanted. Yeah, it is the account that I wanted.
Yeah.
Never mind. All right, so we've got a token again, and now we'll run this. And
That's
the
a pretty
URL.
pretty good testament to how quickly we could debug that problem.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very, very true. So, all right, and I do have, if I actually just go to YouTube now, YouTube.
Well, now they've got that fixed. We can go pull back like the number of views, because wasn't that a real event 2 weeks ago?
It was. So the challenge there is we're going to get into an entirely different API call than we've touched already.
Oh, okay.
Which might be something that we don't want to bite off.
15 minutes before the end of the show.
Yeah, but what we could do is let's see. So we've got this list here. You know, something I really wanted to take a look at is iteration.
okay, let's do that.
So let's take a look at that.
For each kind of thing where you look up records or a different thing?
Yeah, exactly. For each thing. Because, I was writing a blog post, shameless plug, I just posted that on the community earlier today, and I hadn't really played with iteration, and I found out some cool things about it. So I'm, at this point, taking a step away from the YouTube thing, and I just want to look up some records and spin through them. So I'm just going to do a trigger. It doesn't really matter what the trigger is right now.
You're going to be testing.
Yeah, I'm just going to be testing it. I'm just going to put it on the artifact table. And I'll start by looking up records, and I'll search for lookup records. Notice there's two. Make sure if you want to get multiple records, you select the one that says plural.
Now I got to check my example that I built this past week. I'm not sure which one I chose. Thanks, dude.
And then we'll say artifact is the table we're going for. All of these conditions must be met. We don't actually have any criteria. I'm not going to set any criteria. Can I have no criteria? I can't hit the minus, but maybe just
leave it empty.
Well, we'll find out in just a second.
Yeah.
So the key here, so when in the past, all we've done is we've looked at actions and, we're looking at actions, but there's this other button called flow logic. And this allows you to do two things. You can either say if, and you can make a decision based on something, or you could do a for each. And what for each then does is it says iterate over a collection of records. So if we look at our data pane, we can see that we've got a list of records that we can drag this over.
And that's the common one you're going to use is the artifact, is the records from the previous lookup.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, this would most likely be, I think in really every case, it's going to be the output of a previous step, either lookup records or theoretically, I guess you could have your own action that outputs a list of records.
Yeah, I would think a lot of times you might be wanting to update every record that's somehow related to it, like every record in the related list of something.
Yeah.
The count is there if you want to do, for that number of records, do some action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
it's trigger an event, but you wouldn't be doing that on each record. So you've got the option to do either basically a while loop or a for loop.
Yeah, so now what we've got is this smaller plus button, which now allows us to put logic underneath this. So we could put more flow logic, or we could do an action. And so for the action, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do an update record. And we'll decide which record we want to update. what we can do is we can actually go back to the previous step in the for each, and we can update the record that we're iterating over. So I'll just drag that in here. And then you'll see that the table automatically populated when I drag that over. And then we can set the field value. So I'm going to say that the field value of state is, I'm just going to make all of these published. I hope that works. It actually might not work. We'll find out in a second here because there might be some validations on that, but that might be useful anyway. So we'll save this. And now in theory, all this thing is going to do is it's going to iterate over every artifact and update those artifacts to be published. And so I'm just going to choose one, which seems a little counterintuitive because we're not really doing anything with the trigger, but that's fine. So, but what I wanted to look at here was the debug. This is what's really awesome. So you'll notice that this is my browser is hanging again. There we go. My whole computer is hanging up every few moments. So in this view, you can look at the things like the trigger, but if you expand the for each, you can see details about what records were encountered in it. So here are the 3 runtime values that we encountered. You can also look at what happened in the actual action. So we've got the update record. And then notice this drop down, we can look at each iteration of it. So there could be, maybe you've processed 50 things and the 30th one failed. You can actually go in here and drill into a specific iteration of that and then see the details of exactly what it was and what happened and all of this contextual information. So I hadn't seen this before. I think I might have known it was there, but I thought that was really cool when I was writing about that earlier. So just to make sure that actually worked, let's take a look at our artifact manager again. And do I have this? I don't have the column there. I'll just throw it out there. And they're all published. So it did do its job, and we successfully iterated over it all. So,
did you see any option in there to order that lookup? To sort it? Say take them by date created, or so you see max results.
I'm not aware of any way to order the records. You can select a specific, a max result, but I'm not aware of an order.
Out of curiosity, just because I don't even know what that the plus thing next to that trash can, what is that thing? Do you know what that is, Josh?
So that's insert an action. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. That's a note.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can add a little documentation in your flow.
So you're just annotating the flow.
Yeah, it's exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just an annotation, which depending on the nature of what it is, if it's not really clear by which actions you're pulling out, or because usually these things are pretty self-documenting. I mean, if you look at the as this is built out, this is all pretty much natural language. It kind of makes sense, but if you wanted to add more context, you could. I guess it's also worth noting we've got these up and down buttons, so you could actually reorder actions. So you can move an action up or an action down. So that's pretty useful.
Because you can only add a new one at the end, which is slightly annoying, but
yeah. So if you wanted to put one at the beginning, you can add it and then just move it up.
Yeah, it could be a long trip depending on your flow and how many branches you have on there.
As possibility. The other thing, so if you do an if condition, this is also fairly straightforward. So you could fill out your own condition label if you wanted to, but if I just said, I don't know, I'm going to say something nonsensical. No, yeah, this is not nonsensical. I'll say if the count is greater than 1, then I'm going to
That's
do
an
stuff.
interesting label, how it says if count after 1. The other thing
it's basically saying the count field, because you actually picked a count. It's saying of step 1's field called count, basically. So that's kind of telling you which record created this data pill.
Right, but I'm noting in parentheses that it's not aligning with the conditional operator.
Well, so I guess it really depends on the context. So if we weren't looking at a variable called count, it might make more sense in terms of kind of a sentence. But I think that's where this comes in. So
you can override it right there.
Yeah. So now if I click done, now it's count greater than 1.
Interesting thing to note here, Josh, is what I discovered when I was doing an if is if you add another activity on the main flow, you now have an else and an else if.
That's exactly where I was going to go. So thank you for bringing that up. And that is that was the first thing I was trying to figure out when I first did this if. I'm like, well, do I have to turn around to do the
another
opposite
if.
condition?
Yeah, that's what I did the first time too. I said if approved, and then if not approved, I said there's got to be a better way.
Yeah. So just to make this look interesting, I'm going to throw a log statement in here that really does nothing, just to have something there. And then down here, I'll say flow logic. And yeah, this is exactly what we're talking about there, Chuck, where now we have else if. And so we could start chaining these together, else if, or in this case, we just finish it with an else. And so if it's greater than 1, we log. If it's not greater than 1, then we, I don't know, do something else. We schedule the broadcast on YouTube. That's probably not a good idea.
Brings up another point that I discovered is I did an approval activity, action. I got to switch modes here. I did an approval action higher up as like step 2. And then step 3 was if approved. And I ran down and I updated my parent record in one way. I said, okay, then your approval field is approved. And then I said else, and I had another update. So I had an update on each branch, on the if branch and the else branch. When you get back to the main branch and you want to know what really happened, you don't know whether to take activity 3.1 or 4.1 at this point, because the data pill picker, the outputs of each of those activities is different. So you may have to do a lookup record. In fact, you do have to do a lookup record to retrieve what is the latest information. Because if you go all the way back to the trigger record is an instantiation of that trigger record. It has the original values in it. This was a learning experience for me that I want to pass on. That if you use the trigger pill for the artifact record in this case and said, hey, go get the values out of the trigger record, it's not like it's got a running current copy of the trigger record. So when you get further down in your flow, you may be forced to do a lookup on that trigger record to retrieve the current values.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something to keep an eye out for. Now, in most cases, so if you were just saying, so I'm doing something here, so say I do an update here, and I'm going to update a particular record. I'll just say I'm going to update the artifact that we originally touched. The output of this update is also the record. So, we've got this one. And if I didn't have multiple paths I was going down, I don't have to relook it up. I can just use this. But I think what you're saying is that if we don't know which path it took, we don't know which output to choose.
Yes.
And so that's where you might have to look it up.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
All right, we have a question from Casey. Says, is there a flow context for showing those for each if you're not in the designer? I'm not sure I'm grokking the question.
So the closest thing that I'm thinking here, let me just look. I believe
like the executing flows.
Yeah, so the operational view of a flow, you should be able to take a look outside of the designer, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know how much that information that exposes, though. Let's find out.
Like, are we going to be able to drill into each of those iterations in one of these things?
I think so. So this is the record, but then we can open it in operations view, which I think is going to take us.
Just opens you back.
Yeah, it takes us right here. So yeah, so I believe the answer is that yes, you can see that. It's just, really what that's going to do is put you
back in the same UI. But
yeah, exactly. But you don't have to. You're not limited to doing this while developing and using test mode. I guess is.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have looked at. So this doesn't have to be the test thing. This could be an actual live. Production run, and you could have looked at it the same way.
Yeah. So that's extremely useful too. So with that, I think it probably makes sense to start winding down. I know we've kind of been jumping around a little bit, but I think, there's just a lot of stuff to explore, and that's really the goal, is just keep exploring it and keep, looking at what's there. And I think we looked at some cool stuff today.
All right, so I think Casey feels good. So in the chat, last call. If there's anything else you guys want to bring up before we head out, I'm waiting for the day we get our first question in Twitch. It's not happening today.
So am I.
Okay. Well, this is cool stuff. So there may be some fiddling between shows, because I truly want to get to the point where we're doing the live scheduling with this Joker, because that'll affect my experience of using all this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we're at a point where we want to show you the process of building it, but we very much want to get it working in production. So we'll I guess the interesting thing too is, I mean, as we explore that, I'm sure we'll learn stuff that we can then bring back to this as well and talk about it in other ways.
Yeah, there's definitely two ways to think about this. One of which is when you first look at it, it's extremely cool, and the simplicity may seem limiting, right? Because you have a pretty confined, compared to some of the other ways that you can put business logic in the system, it's confined. But honestly, for the vast majority of use cases I can think of, it's enough, right?
Yep.
Your really crazy workflows, you're not going to turn them off tomorrow. You're not going to refactor them tomorrow, because they're really crazy workflows for a reason. But most of your workflows are not crazy. And so this could very well, like one of the things we've talked about is, a future one of these may be taking an existing integration and flow designing it. And you could probably do the same path with a workflow. Take an existing simple workflow and flow design it, right?
Yeah.
So.
And at some point we should explore approvals, because that's new. It's brand new. It's kind of a core part of Flow Designer. That's kind of a whole topic.
And frankly, in my opinion, from what I've seen, is more feature rich than the workflow approvals.
That's my understanding as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Cool. Alrighty. Well, gentlemen, let us go around the horn. Chuck, what is your feeling about your beer?
If it were a beer, the hard cider.
Your cider. Yes, your cider. Your drink. Your libation.
It's all gone. It was pretty good. There are times of the year when I'm in the mood for an apple cider flavor, and this is one of them. It's that fall winter feeling. I must have been tasting it at the wrong time a year before, but this one hit me just right. I'm going to give the Smith & Forge hard cider 3.5.
All right. Josh?
So the Blood Orange IPA from 21st Amendment Brewery, this is really, really good. And I've had good luck with beer lately. This is a solid 4.
All right. And the Sweet Baby Java, I honestly am not really tasting the Java espresso part of it, but the chocolate and peanut butter part is hitting me just right. I'm going to give this a 4.25.
Yeah, nice.
All righty. Okay. So thanks again, everybody. Just checking for last second questions. Don't see any, so I think we're going to wind our way on out of here. Thank you, everybody. Like we said, probably for the balance of the month of December, we haven't really worked out our schedule for when the holidays. I know I will probably be out the last 2 weeks of the year. So somehow or another, like for the balance of shows that happen and whoever is doing them, they will probably be heavy on Flow Designer, just because that is the thing, and people seem to be enjoying it by the metrics we have. So as always, reach out to us. We are easily, all three of us are extremely easy to find by any number of things. Google any of our names, you will find us very, very easily. So thank you for watching, and we will catch you again next time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.